All right. Hello and welcome to our Women in Sustainability Leadership Program. I'm Corinne Hafel. I'm a director with the U.S. Green Building Council's Market Transformation and Development team. And today I have the pleasure of once again acting as your virtual MC. So on behalf of today's event hosts, Evolution Marketing, the Wisconsin Sustainable Business Council's Women in Sustainability, and the U.S. Green Building Council, I welcome you to our 2024 International Women's Day Celebration and Leadership event. This is the 7th year that our trio of organizations have collaborated on this important programming. And we're ever so grateful to our amazing volunteer planning group, our promotional partner, Be Local Wisconsin, and each and every one of you for making the time to be here with us today. And we are so very pleased to be able to welcome those of you who have been with us for a long time now, as well as those who are new to the discussion. So today's program is going to start with brief remarks from our co-hosts before we welcome our featured speaker, Deborah A, who will speak to the importance of genuine psychological safety and trust so leaders can maximize their unique contribution to the better world we all want to see while navigating this period of global transition with optimism. And throughout Deborah's presentation and during the breakout sessions, we will be addressing the 2024 International Women's Day theme, Inspire Inclusion. When we inspire others to understand and value women's inclusion, we forge a better world. And when women themselves have safe places and are inspired to be included, there is a sense of belonging, relevance, and empowerment. From grassroots action to wide-scale momentum, we can inspire inclusion. Now, when the program concludes at 1, we hope you leave feeling informed and empowered to take action. So just a reminder, we are recording everything except for the breakout discussions today, and we will be sending you access to that afterwards, along with a resource document that will include all of the tidbits that we share in today's chat, because we will not be keeping a copy of the chat to share out. So any of the thoughts and things that you share in the breakout sessions or in the chat will remain anonymous, and this is we hope that you find this to be a safe place to participate. So while we're going to ask you to mute during the presentation, we do encourage you to fully engage again in the chat using the Everyone chat feed to share your thoughts throughout the program. If you haven't done so already, please do introduce yourself there. And if anyone wants to stick around after we adjourn at 1, we will keep the Zoom live for 20 additional minutes to allow for further conversation, reflection, and just a space to be with others reflecting on today. So as I mentioned, my role is with the U.S. Green Building Council, serving Wisconsin and our West North Central region markets. Our mission is to transform the way that buildings and communities are designed, built, and operated, enabling an environmentally and socially responsible, healthy, and prosperous environments that improve overall quality of life. And we do many things to achieve our mission, but one of my ultimate favorites is the Women in Green program. It's a worldwide leadership program that creates space for women who are shifting the narrative on empowerment, access, and impact. And as old paradigms are challenged and a new roadmap emerges, we're shaking up how we measure progress, who defines those indicators, and what and whom is missing from the leadership table as we unfailingly work to raise the quality of life for all. So again, this year, the U.S. Green Building Council is bringing women in green programs to cities across the nation, including the notable Green Building Conference in Philadelphia this November and a regional impact conference taking place in St. Paul this May. Each program is anchored in the theme of fresh perspectives. So in this world of constant change, we are challenging you to reimagine the challenges faced by women in the professional realm as if encountering them for the first time. With 4 different generations in today's workforce and a 5th on the horizon, all of our experiences are diverse and creates a fertile ground for collaborative solutions. So we ask that you join us at 1 or more of our Women in Green programs to explore the power of fresh perspectives. And together, we will innovate, create, and redefine our roles in today's dynamic professional landscape. So with that, USGBC's Women in Green program, combined with my personal passion, brought to me this amazing Women in Sustainability Leadership Program collaboration years ago. And I'm thrilled to once again share the microphone with some incredible women leaders today that were brought together by this outstanding planning committee that you see here on the screen. I am about to pass the microphone to Jessie, but I just wanted to take a moment to personally thank each of these women for their leadership, mentorship, and friendship. Each of them brings such a strength and a passion to their sustainability work, and I am a better person thanks to my relationship. I gain so much from working with these groups each year, and I strongly encourage anyone who is interested in joining the 2025 planning group to let us know. We will be sending a follow-up survey after the event that will allow you to throw your name in the ring, but you're welcome to reach out to any one of us via email or now in the chat if you want to contribute to next year's program. So with that, I'd like to turn things over to Jessie. She's the managing director of the Wisconsin Sustainable Business Council that's dedicated to advancing sustainable principles through the power of business. And with over a decade of experience in sustainability and an MBA focused on sustainable business management, Jessie oversees WSBC's programs supporting businesses in integrating sustainability for improved outcomes. She co-founded and co-chairs the Wisconsin Women in Sustainability Group and fosters collaboration and inclusivity. So Jessie has also been an advisor to the UW Sustainable Management Program and holds certificates in lean process, professional coaching, permaculture, and regenerative design. And I'm proud to call her a friend. With that, Jessie, it's all yours.
Oh, thank you so much, Corinne, and happy International Women's Day to everyone out there. I love this event every year. It's just something that we look forward to, kind of a time and a space to just pause a little bit from the hustle and bustle of life and celebrate and really think about how we can continue to improve our work and our roles in sustainability. So with that, I am going to introduce the Women in Sustainability Circles. We call WIS Circles. Every year we host these in the spring, which we kick off with this event. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what they are and invite you to participate. So essentially, the structure of the Women in Sustainability Circles are that we would meet for 30 minutes for about 6 to 8 weeks, and each person in the circle gets an opportunity to have what we call a hot seat. And what we mean by that is really it's your space. It's your space to bring an idea, a challenge, a celebration, whatever to the group to get feedback. They are different themes, which I'll talk about in a second, but essentially you have a kickoff meeting. Every person in the circle gets a chance to have their time in the spotlight or the hot seat, and then you kind of have a wrap-up meeting. So the themes this year are suggested as this, but each circle always kind of takes its own shape and form. Personal sustainability, business sustainability. So personal sustainability is really for those who are, looking to integrate more sustainability into their daily lives. Business sustainability for those of you who have jobs working in sustainability that want to share some maybe work challenges or ideas with each other. The leadership development topic is more about your personal leadership and how you can grow in leadership. Career development is often, students, career professionals, job changers, those of you who want advice at seeking the next phase of your career or looking potentially for jobs. So kind of support around that. We have a topic that's focused on executive leadership or entrepreneurship. So those of you who are business owners or at the executive level, talking about the challenges related to sustainability in your business at that level. And then new last year, we launched a book club as well. And so last year we had a wonderful book club. That was the group that I was a part of. And read an amazing book and had great conversations. This book, I'm suggesting The Intersectional Environmentalist by Leah Thomas. It's just a recommendation for those in book clubs. It's not necessarily set in stone. Whoever decides on that circle will get to choose the book collectively. So the circles are open now. You'll be able, I'll drop the link here in just a minute. To apply, if you want to be a circle, make sure that you put your top 2 circle topics that you want to participate in. And it looks like Heather has another book circle that she's recommending, so that's great. And we'll match you essentially. We do look and ask for volunteers to lead each one of these circles. So if you have like, access to a Zoom and you're willing to kind of hold the space each week, we do look for leaders for the circles. So that's a way you can participate as well. And then I wanted to share that this year we're going to wrap up our circles with an in-person event. Last year, Corinne and you, the Women in Green, hosted a wonderful event around wellness. We did some forest walks and it was beautiful. So we wanted to kind of keep this tradition. We're going to do a breath work event. So if you're not familiar with breath work, it's a way to help calm your nervous system, which everyone needs right now, especially going through 2024. So if you're not familiar or have not experienced breathwork, I highly recommend it. It's actually one of my dear friends who owns this company, Forward Outdoor, who will be leading the breathwork experience. We're going to be outside, hopefully due to weather, and it'll be in the Milwaukee area, and then it'll be followed by kind of a social sustainability tour at Lakefront Brewery. So that's sort of the Women in Sustainability Circle timeline, kicking off today, wrapping up with this breathwork event in June. After that, now I'm going to hand the microphone over to Lisa Giesenbauer, President of Evolution Marketing. Lisa is also the co-founder of the Women in Sustainability Group. She's a champion of sustainability, social justice, environmental justice, B Corp movements, all of the things. And so I always appreciate collaborating with you, Lisa, and she's here to frame out the conversation for today. So handing it to you, Lisa.
Thank you, Jesse, and thank you, Corinne, and welcome everybody. Happy International Women's Day. It's so exciting. I can't believe, I believe this is our 7th one that we've done, right? I can't, it just seems like it was yesterday that we did the first one in Oconomowoc. So it's amazing to see how the movement is growing in Wisconsin. So as Jesse said, my name is Lisa Giesenbauer, and I'm the president of Evolution Marketing. We're a Wisconsin-based sustainability consulting and marketing communications firm that works in the intersectional space of sustainability, governance, operations, HR, and Marcom. My company, Evolution Marketing, is also a certified B Corporation, and I also happen to be one of the co-founders of Be Local Wisconsin and our current chair. Some of you may be saying, well, okay, Lisa, what's a certified B Corporation and why is that relevant today? Well, certified B Corporations, or B Corps, as we like to say, are companies verified by B Lab Global to meet high standards of social and environmental performance, accountability, and transparency. B Corps are legally committed to bringing benefit not just to shareholders, but to all stakeholders, workers, consumers, community members, and the environment. Simply put, certified B Corps and our regional partner, Be Local Wisconsin, we are all working to realize our shared a shared vision of an inclusive, equitable, and regenerative. Sorry, my cat is making some serious loud noises behind me. We are all working to create an inclusive, equitable, and regenerative economy that works for everyone. We understand that in order to address the extreme inequalities that exist in our society, the way business has traditionally been done, it needs to change. And those of us working at the more than 8,000 certified B Corps operating around the world are all part of a movement of people using business as a force for good. We're building the B Corp movement to change our economic system. And to do so, we must change the rules of the game. B Lab Global, and with our partner B Lab US and Canada, creates standards, policies, and tools and programs that help shift the behavior, culture, and structural underpinnings of capitalism. We mobilize the B Corp community towards collective action to address society's most critical challenges. By harnessing the power of business, the Business as a Force for Good movement is positively able to impact companies around the world, helping them to balance profit with purpose. Together, we are shifting our global economy from a system that profits few to one that benefits all, advancing a new model that moves from concentrating wealth and power to ensuring equity from extraction to regeneration, and from prioritizing individualism to embracing interdependence. Basically, what the B Corp movement is doing is what the UN talks about on this slide. So according to the United Nations, the biggest challenge facing the world today is extreme inequalities. And those extreme inequalities underpin our entire system of business and how we function as a society. So the B Corp movement was created to address that challenge. And if you are interested in the B Corp movement, go to the Be Local Wisconsin website to learn more. But we have been working for 17 years now in the B Corp space to create this new, more equitable system. And our system is literally based on the 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which are on the slide in front of you. And within those 17 goals, there are literally 169 sub-targets. Those sub-targets are how we can measure this change. And those targets are also based on the understanding from a holistic perspective, meaning we cannot address, say, hunger. We cannot address poverty or zero hunger without addressing education, equality, gender equity. All of these things are interconnected together. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. Jesse, next slide, please. And as we frame out today, I really want to talk about some key concepts that I think will help us all to be on the same page as we move forward with these understandings. So as we know, there's all these different forms of inequality that exist today. Well, these forms of inequality go back to the root cause of our systems of inequity that exist. And so when we think about it, intersectionality is when one group, so intersectionality describes the ways in which systems of inequality based on gender, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender identity, disability, class, and other forms of discrimination intersect to create unique and dynamic effects. And so what this means is that it's a systems approach to understanding the problems that we're seeing, because it's not just that somebody might be experiencing sexism in the workplace. They might also be experiencing ableism, or they might have some type of a learning disability. So then they're experiencing a disability too in the workplace. And together we need to treat the individual as a whole. And so that's what we're going to talk about in the next slide, is in order for us to move this topic forward, we really need to look at the difference between equality and equity. So this slide comes to us from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, and there's actually links in this whole slide deck. So afterwards, everybody will be able to click the links and read articles. But a lot of people think, well, if we look at equality, that everyone gets the same thing regardless of if they need, if what they're being given is what they actually need. And so when we use the example of a woman who has a learning disability, we should look at equity. So what things does she need in the workplace to help her address not only showing up as a woman, but also having the opportunity to have resources that will help her to address her learning disability so she can perform her job in the best manner possible. So equity is what everyone gets what they need, and understanding the barriers, circumstances, and conditions that are different for each person. And I think this graph does a really good job of showing we can't just give everyone a bike. We need to look at what people need in that workplace. Okay, so the next slide, please. So the next slide shows my favorite definition of equity. And because we're talking about women in the professional space today and women elevating other women in the workforce, I think it's really important to think about how equity shows up in the workplace. So equity in the workplace means to intentionally and purposely and consciously ensure that everyone in the company has access to the support, resources, treatment, and the opportunities they need to succeed in the workplace. Next slide. This is made manifest through, we're going to go to psychological health first. So this slide comes to us from Great Places to Work, and there's two articles that are also linked into this slide, one about psychological safety and one about how Great Places to Work defines psychological safety and psychological health. So from an individual standpoint, psychological health is what we all need each and every day to show up and be our authentic selves. So that refers to an individual's internal state of well-being, their emotional stability, resilience, and coping skills. If we don't have those things, we cannot go to work and show up as our authentic self and also be successful in our endeavors. And so psychological safety comes in when you're in a group environment, and it refers to the context in which an individual interacts with others, and they're able to have a relationship of trust, open communication, and mutual respect with their either coworkers or colleagues or being a team. So I just want to showcase that there's a difference between the individual and then the individual in a group situation when we start to think about and unpack psychological safety. Next slide, Jess. And then the last one is allyship. So again, as we're talking about the workplace, allyship is really important. And I would encourage everyone who's listening today to strive to be an ally in your workplace and in your community. To me, allies wield their influence to amplify the voices and elevate the employee experience or community experience, because this could also happen at a local common council meeting or at a community organization, to elevate the experience of others, especially those from an underrepresented group. So as before we were talking about, could be a woman with a disability, a learning disability. It might be that someone is able to explain that she needs to see things in a larger font, or X when you're having a meeting. So it's not just telling people what to do, but it's providing opportunities and literally helping to elevate the voice of the individuals who don't have a seat at the table or are not there. Hopefully this is making sense. The last slide, I believe, is our code of ethics for today. So this slide comes to us from the B Corp community, and specifically the BIPOC, so the Black, Indigenous, and people of color community within the B Corp world. That group of individuals put together this code of conduct, which we use in the B Corp world. I'm just going to run through it real quick. And I want to remind everyone today that we are here to learn, okay? And when we're learning, sometimes we might have experiences that are challenging or upsetting, and that's okay. But we also need to remember not to take those thoughts and feelings out on others, okay? So if we use our code of conduct for today, so we want to lead with empathy, we want to appreciate each other as human beings, and we want to appreciate each other's experiences. We want to get comfortable with discomfort. If for some reason you feel that you need to take a break, that's okay. Today, we're creating a safe space. So you take care of you, do what you need to do for yourself today. Okay, go off screen. You don't have to be on screen if you don't want. Really, we want you to be happy and healthy today. We want to value diverse perspectives. We want to honor the unique experiences each of us brings, even especially if that's different from your own. And we want to stay judgment free. Because remember, you might feel a certain way about somebody else's experience, but you have to remember that each of us is different. And if we're creating an authentic space, we have to have trust in one another, and we have to have mutual respect for one another. We want to each advocate for our own emotional well-being. Like I said, if you need to take a break or go off screen, no problem at all. Move up and move back. We're going to do breakouts this afternoon or later today. And so we want everyone to have the opportunity to move up and share your perspective, and then move back and listen to others. And the last thing is we want to practice radical inclusion. So really, inclusion is everyone's job. So be a good ally. We want you to ask, assess, and assist. And it is now my pleasure to introduce you to Deborah. Deborah grew up living in 3 different continents, and in doing so learned to let go of the idea of what was normal. She is a natural-born revolutionary, and she struggled for decades to find her place in the world. Wondering what was wrong with her, she felt out of place as a minister, as an engineer, and even though she loved both professions. Through her experience, she learned the importance of psychological safety, realizing that this is what she was missing. From the inside out, she truly got how challenging it can be when trying to operate in alignment with your values in a world gone mad. Today, she's going to share her insights with us in celebration of all women everywhere and our inspiration to inspire inclusion. I'm so happy to have Deborah here. I've heard her speak before, and I'm so glad she's here to share her message with all of you today. Please help me give a warm welcome to Deborah.
Thank you. Okay. All right. So every person in this room today, International Women's Day, wants to see women empowered. And I am here to show you a unique way to do just that for real. Okay. So we all know, as Lisa just brought out, that our systems are not very supportive of gender equality. And we have all, myself included, I'm a woman, we have all faced unpleasant consequences of gender inequality, independent of our gender, right? Because it affects us all. So I'd actually like to draw your attention to something that Lisa mentioned earlier, and that is the Sustainable Development Goal number 5. achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. So the numbers, let's be honest, they're kind of depressing, right? Like the progress report opens with these encouraging words, and I quote, "The world is not on track to achieve gender equality by 2030. At the current rate of progress, it is estimated that it will take up to 286 years to close gaps in legal protection and remove discriminatory laws, 140 years for women to be represented equally in positions of power and leadership in the workplace." And I'm going to stop there. How old will your grandchildren be in 286 years? So we know that many have fought for decades and beyond for gender equality. Celebrities like Taraji P. Henson and Emma Stone have shown light on the fact that even in Hollywood, making it doesn't mean that you're protected from this pervasive systemic issue, ranging from unequal pay to continuous sexual harassment and worse. So it's completely understandable and human to feel overwhelmed. If organizations as powerful as the UN, that's global and has set up, what do you call it, subcommittees like the UN Women that was set up in 2010, and people who are both powerful and famous in Hollywood and Nashville aren't able to really stem the tide or turn things around with gender inequality, it can feel like, well, what can I do? Right? If you've ever wondered that question, what on earth can I do about it? Please type me in the chat. Let's have a moment of reflection for how overwhelming this feels for every female alive right now. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of me's in the chat. Thank you so much for participating. And this is going to be an interactive discussion, so keep your fingers ready because I will be asking questions. Thank you. So this question of what on earth can I do about it is actually quite important. Oh, I'm trying to switch hold on a second. I've got give me just a second. Let me see if I can, there we go. What on earth can I do about it? At least your answer to this question is very important. There are actually three possible ways that you could answer. The first is that if you think that you can't do anything about it, the status quo remains. In effect, overwhelm is probably on a societal level our biggest challenge because we see these things happening over and over and over again. But why is overwhelm such a problem? It's because it can tend to stop us from using our power to do what we can do to right the situation. So, for example, have you ever gone to a store and you went to pick up an item that maybe you don't buy very often, and you went to the shelves and there were 20 or 30 different versions of this item, all with different features, and they all sounded great, and you just got so overwhelmed that you walked out of the store and didn't even buy what you came for? What happened is you're not a professional buyer of that item. So you don't have a system in your mind for how to organize all of that information and make a decision that you believe really truly suits your best needs. So in a similar way, feeling overwhelmed about the pervasiveness of gender inequality can prevent us from doing anything. But I want you to think about it. We're all here on Zoom, on a device. We have some privileges, right? Just a few. And all the privileges that we are enjoying right now, many of them were because of things that our ancestors did, maybe our grandparents or parents, or further up the line. So a question to ask is, what kind of ancestor am I being? What kind of legacy am I leaving? There's a really awesome quote from Noam Chomsky, who's a very well-known critic and public intellectual. The more privilege you have, the more opportunity you have. The more opportunity you have, the more responsibility you have. So for ourselves, for the women here, for those who aren't women, but who are allies for gender equality, but even more so for the, what was it, 1 in 5 girls that was getting married before they turned 18? Good grief, right? We have a bit of a responsibility, right? To do what we can to improve the situation. So coming back to this idea of what can we do? Or what kind of ancestor are we being? There's a second thing that we can think about doing. Okay, all right, so we're not going to do nothing. We're going to do something. What are we going to do? Well, what have people before us done? There's been a lot of advocating and educating, right? There's been a lot of, women's, there's been protests, there's been all kinds of things, movements set up to advocate for women's rights. And they have met with some success, but why are we still having such a massive problem where we got to wait 286 years just to get like some basic legal protection? What's going on there? I'm guessing that some of the people in attendance today are probably expecting me to share how you can advocate for women and girls and also how you can educate others on how to do so, right? I'm guessing that some people expected that from me today. But I'm going to say that there are two major challenges with advocating and educating around gender equality in the way that it has been done most of the time thus far. First of all, is it's not received well because it's often received as judgy or angry. Okay. And no one wants to be lectured. So people kind of just, yeah, okay. Or it's not received well because there isn't a good bridge built between the people to whom that advocating and educating is directed and the actual new perspective that those activists are trying to get them to adopt. There's a really, really, really big gap. And so the people that are advocating are speaking from their perspective. And then the people that are receiving that perspective don't get how to cross that chasm, that gap. I'm wondering if this makes sense. If it makes sense to you, just let me know in the comments. Put plainly, it just doesn't work very well. And we're seeing, unfortunately, the statistics to support that because this is not a new issue. But I do have some good news. There is a third way. To put it in context, I'd like to remind you of a quote that's often attributed to Albert Einstein. I don't really know who said it, but we know the quote, right? We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking that we used to create them, right? So when we think about the way that we've actually been approaching addressing gender inequality, that's actually the bigger issue. Are you open to shifting to a different level of thinking? If so, type yes in the chat, please. If you're open to trying out or sampling a different way of approaching this issue of gender inequality. Awesome. I see lots of yeses. Thank you for playing full out here. So the third option is that you're determined to make a real difference, and you do that by doing something different. And I believe that gender inequalities have only persisted, but not only persisted, but also worsened because most people don't really understand the root cause of the issue. So Lisa gave a really good warm up for that when she was talking about the root causes of a lot of different forms of inequality, right? And she mentioned the difference between equality and equity. Hold on to your hats here. I'm going to explain something to you if you're open to it. It's going to be a little bit of an interesting ride. It's going to be a little bit of adventure. But we're going to go into the human mind a little bit, okay? In truth, our minds are multiple. So this means, and by the way, just in case you didn't know this, the mind is not just in your brain. The mind is in every cell of our body. So the body and the mind really are interconnected. It's kind of this Western idea of separation that we want to separate the mind and the body, but they really are one and the same. Okay. The brain is just an organ in the body with specific functions, but it is definitely the mind is part, all inclusive of all the body. So our minds are multiple. They're made up of many parts. And each part has a specific focus and role in our system. There are protector parts who are similar to parentified children. They do their best to protect all of the other parts in the system, you could say, from harm. They can be kind, they can be mean, but ultimately, every single part has a pure and noble intention. So, if these protectors are concerned that maybe there's a vulnerable or a sensitive part of you that could be hurt or whose actions might bring negative consequences to the system, AKA you, they do their best to quiet or suppress these parts. It's part of the reason that so many people are afraid of public speaking. No one is born and it's like, oh no, public speaking. Kids public speak all the time, no problem, until they are introduced to something that makes them recognize there may be a negative consequence if they speak publicly and they mess up somehow. And then that's when one of their protectors will don't say anything in public. And then they're 40 years old and they're still trembling and sweating and can't speak when they get in front of an audience. So that's a simple example of a protector doing their job to keep the system safe. In its mind, it's keeping us safe. So each part that then gets suppressed or quieted, we call those parts exiles. They're basically exiled, they're in prison. They can't get out unless, and they do try to, and they do at times succeed in getting out, but most of the time they're quieted by protectors. So each part has a specific agenda. It has a role to play that it is uniquely qualified to play. And some of our parts are online all of the time, and some of our parts go on and offline depending on a lot of different things. So existing in each of us is also what we call the self. So by the way, if you want to get a better description of what I'm sharing here, chapter 1 of this book on the right, No Bad Parts by Dr. Richard C. Schwartz, is an excellent resource. I highly recommend everyone reading chapter 1. It's really great. And if you fill out the survey that I will leave at the end, I'm happy to send you a copy of chapter 1 if you would like to read that and don't have the book. So when we were young, some of our managers, maybe they got nervous that the self, which is who our true divine essence is, wasn't able to take care of everything and keep us safe. So those young protectors took over. And so what they did is they did something to keep us safe in the moment. But because no one ever taught us how to relieve them from their duty, they're still there doing the same thing 20, 30, 40, 50 years later because they never got the memo that what they did is no longer necessary. So that's why they're still in these roles, and they mean well, they really do, but they're often causing some damage. So I just want to kind of go over this. I just covered a little bit here. So there are parts in our system. Our mind is not just one mind. We have many different parts. Some of them are protectors, some of them are exiles, and we have a self. And that self, the thing that makes the self really unique and how we know it's not a part, is that it's calm, it's curious, it's compassionate, and it doesn't need any part or any person to be different from how they are in this moment. That's what makes the self unique. And ideally, the self is the leader in your system, in your mind. It doesn't mean that it shuts up all the parts, no, but that it's the leader and the guide in how the system works best. Okay. So if you understood what I just shared, can you type a PEPs in the comments in the chat? So PEPS, PEPs, meaning parts, protectors, exiles, and self. So I know that you got it. All right. All right. We got some PEPs. Awesome. 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 All right. So now, what does this have to do with gender inequality? I'm bringing it back now. So life is fractal, meaning that patterns repeat themselves. So here we have an example of a snowflake. And I don't know if you knew this, but snowflakes have repeating patterns. It's the same pattern it repeats. There's lots of examples in nature of this. And it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, right? Even like a rose, when it's blooming, it's a certain petal pattern that just keeps repeating and repeating, right? So that's the truth from the way our atoms are organized to the way our galaxies and solar systems are organized. They're all organized in similar patterns that just keep repeating. So that's true also for the way our minds work and the way that we as humans self-organize. So whether it's us as individuals or in our families or in our organizations or in our countries or even on our planet, we are organized in the same way. So bringing it back to the discussion of gender inequality, many, in this case, many women, or most women, have been exiles. Okay, so that means a lot of women have been suppressed and quieted in many ways by well-meaning protectors who didn't really understand what was going on. But let's be fair, right? We're here about equality, so let's be fair. We could also talk about men's emotions being exiles. We could also talk about people above age 60 being exiles. We could also talk about people who need to use a wheelchair being exiles. We could also talk about Black people being exiles. We could keep going on and on. I hope that you understand and see that gender inequality is the same as inequality. All forms of inequality and inequity come from the same root issue. What is that root issue? I'm going to say it one more time so that we remember. It is well-meaning protectors that are not actually evil, but who don't really properly understand how life works, who are trying to keep our system safe. And they exile those that they are concerned may be more vulnerable, may cause a weakness for the system. If you've got that, let me know in the comments. Or do I need to repeat something? I always want to check and make sure everybody's with me. You could hear that again. Okay, I'll say it again. So the root cause of all inequality are protectors who mean well. They're not evil in their nature, but they don't understand how life actually works, which is interdependence, which Lisa also touched on. I was like, shoot, she should have done the talk because she already got half my points, right? So interdependence and not independence, or she mentioned individualism is another way of putting it, okay? One of my favorite authors, Charles Eisenstein, calls it the story of separation. But I didn't have time. I had to edit a lot, so I didn't get into. I'm not getting into it here, but we can definitely talk about it in the breakouts. Okay. So the reason why these protectors cause so much damage, again, I want to be clear. It's not because they're evil. It's because they don't understand and they're afraid. So their actions are coming from fear. But what is all life based on? All life is based on love, not fear. Fear is a distortion of love. So this is why it causes damage. It's the same thing. Like technically, every single invention is natural because it came from the natural world, but it can be distorted to be unhealthy and unnatural. But that doesn't mean that it didn't come from a natural source. Okay. All right, so let me just keep going here. I think I went, yeah, fear is a distortion of love. But the good news is that we know how to reverse the process of fear distortion. Do you know that? We know how to reverse it. So Dr. Schwartz, in his book, he calls it insight. And it's a foundational part of what we use to dispel inequalities with compassion. So more on insight later, but who's up for learning how to do insight, how to reverse fear distortion, and thus gender inequality? Yes. All right, let's do it. Love it. Love it. Okay. So I'm just going to do a quick recap because that was a lot, right? Y'all were like, wow, we just went back in time. So let's just do a little quick recap of what we've learned so far so that it sticks. So first, we know that gender inequality has been persisting. It hasn't gone away or gotten better over time in spite of all of our efforts. We've also seen that advocating and educating the way that it's been done has not been as successful as we would have liked to have seen. Finally, we weren't making progress with inequality because we didn't understand its root cause. So we were attacking all the symptoms and we weren't getting to the root. And now we know what the root is. We know that the root is about managers or protectors who are trying to keep the system safe. So they suppress anything that they sense might create a weakness in the system. They mean well, but they don't really understand the true nature of how we actually are living on the planet, which, I mean, let's just be honest, that's like us as a species, right? We're learning and we're evolving and we're growing. So we get to adulthood through childhood and adolescence. And most of us can do face palms all day long about stuff we did in our adolescence that we're like, please don't bring that up. Don't let anybody know that that was me, right? So this is kind of where we are in humanity, right? We're kind of starting to realize the face palming of, oh my goodness, what were we thinking? And then finally, the thing that we learned is that the way to reverse these fear-based behaviors from these protectors is to practice insight. But I didn't tell you what insight was. I just told you that it could reverse it. I kept you on the edge of your seat. All right, here we go. So before we move forward, I just want to actually take a moment and see how is this landing. Can y'all just leave a one word in the chat to let me know how this is landing for you so far? Some of the responses that I've heard in the past are things like clarity, relief, excitement, even that there's some other options other than what we've seen most of the time. Resonating, landing, inspiring, powerful, hope, understanding, beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. Insightful, clarity. Yes, thank you so much for sharing and participating. Good, good, I'm glad to hear that. Okay, so now we're gonna get to the juicy stuff, right? So we know that the root cause of all inequality, including gender inequality, we know what it is. So the rest is easy, right? No, sorry. Now that we learned that we need to practice insight, it's not the actual practicing of the insight that's difficult. It's actually remembering to do it. Because usually when we need to do it is when we're the most heated and emotional, and that's when we don't remember. So also, it's sometimes hard to do it because it's hard to access self-energy. So that calm, curious, centered, confident, compassionate, connected part of our, well, essence of who we are, if we're not, it takes some practice to get used to accessing it. So let's talk about how we do it. Let's do some insight. Who's ready? Who's ready for 3 questions? It's just because it's only 3 questions that we need to be able to practice insight at home. Who wants to practice insight at home? Who wants to give this a try? Love to see. Oh, I'm not seeing everybody. Okay, I'm not seeing everybody on the screen, so maybe you can put in the chat for me. Yes. Okay, awesome. Thank you. Okay, so the first question, y'all ready now? You told me you're ready. By the way, before I say what those questions are, I just want to give it proper context. We're either asking this to the part that we notice that's very strong inside of us, has a strong emotional reaction, or we're asking it to someone else. So let's say that someone else is having a strong emotional reaction, a friend of ours, a colleague. This is how we start to create what Lisa mentioned, psychological safety for the women around us. But it has to be done from a place of curiosity, calm. It really needs to come from our self-energy, which is where the hard part is learning how to do that. Okay. So the first question is, what would you like for me to know? Another way of saying that is, what message do you have for me? What do you need to say? What do you need to get off your chest? Any of those kinds of questions. You word it how feels good for you, but this is the essence of it. What would you like for me to know? And then you listen. You don't have to say anything else, just listen. So if you've gotten the first question, could you type it in the chat so I make sure everybody is still with me? All right. Second question, awesome. What are you concerned might happen if you don't continue and then fill in the blank with whatever it is? It could be anything from feeling sad to raging and punching pillows. It could be whatever it is, right? Maybe staying silent, trying to stay invisible. Ooh, that's one for a lot of women, right? Being invisible, well, a lot of us are really good at it. So what are you afraid might happen if you don't continue to stay invisible? I'm just giving you an example, okay? And then you're going to listen. Same thing. Now here you can say something, but it is not advice. It is not fixing. There's one thing you can say, and that is, I get it. That makes sense to me. I hear you. Yeah, you're not wrong. I get it. Even when I say it now, I feel it in my body. A resonance, a recognition, a relief. Okay, so if you got question number 2, let me know in the chat. Awesome. Yes, good. Okay, we've got 2. Awesome. Okay, so question number 3. How can I help? It could also be, what do you need from me? How can I support you? And then you listen. Now, I want to be really clear here. You're not obligated to actually, if the part's like, I want you to go jump off of the tallest building, you don't have to follow its instructions. You can just get curious and start back at question 1 and say, I'm curious why you want me to jump off a building. I'm curious about that. Tell me more about that. So okay, great question, Beth. The target would be either another person if you're trying to support them through a difficult emotion or whatever they're going through, or for yourself. You can do this on yourself with the part of you that's upset. So the beauty of insight is it helps you to understand that you are not your feelings. We all know this, but then there's like an actual practice to support you in realizing, oh, no, I really am not my feelings. Like my feeling is over here. I ask my feelings to step outside of me for a minute so I can see them better. And then I talk to them just like this. I go through these 3 questions with them. Did I answer your question? Yeah, we're going to walk through a scenario, right? Very right. Thank you, Corinne. We're going to walk through a scenario in just a moment. So at the beginning, as I mentioned a little earlier, the hardest part is just actually remembering to do this. And the other hard part is to actually access that self energy. And this is why it's good to do it with a skilled facilitator or someone else who's been practicing it for a while. Doesn't have to be a professional, but it could be a friend, but someone who is actually able to do that for you, because it takes a while to really get the hang of what it feels like to be leading from yourself versus from another part. Because then you'll be like, oh, it's this whiny part again. That's another part that doesn't like the whiny part. Neither of them is yourself, but they're all part of you. Okay. This is a really good question. How would these questions help gender equality? So, by being able to understand how these different parts operate and work with them, life is fractal. We get to see how we can work with external parts that are being unfair or in our perception, or difficult in our perception, or any of those things in our perception. We learn the skills of curious inquiry, compassionate inquiry. And I'm sure that's like a name of a practice. I'm not talking about that. I'm just using the words in English. I'm not, isn't trademarked, but I'm sure somebody has. Okay. But it's a compassionate and curious way to gain insight on another person the same way as you do inside of yourself. It's one and the same. This is where we as a society, that's our next step, is to understand that what we do in our internal cosmos is reflected in our external cosmos, and or at least the same skills that we build in our internal cosmos, in our internal world, we can use in our external world. Because up till now, that's not what we were taught. Okay, so Beth, I hope that answers your question. If it doesn't, go ahead and throw some more in the chat. Okay, I'm going to keep going. So, are you ready to give this practice a go? I know Corinne's ready. She's like, all right. Yeah, I already talked about that. Sorry, I get really excited and I forget about the slides. All right, so if it helps, you can close your eyes. You don't have to. Okay. Take a moment and bring yourself to a recent moment in time when you felt that either you or somebody nearby you had been treated unfairly, whether for your gender, age, race, anything. So I'm going to actually see if I can move over this chat so I can see more people. And oh, everyone's got their camera off. Okay, so that's not going to help me. I was going to try to see if you guys are there. So I'm going to just trust that you all are there. And just see if you can go back to how you felt when you were in that moment, where you felt like you or someone near you had been treated unfairly. So now that you're feeling that moment, turn up the dial for a moment on the intensity of the emotion you were feeling so that you can really experience it. I promise you're safe here. Nothing bad's going to happen. Just allow yourself to really feel that feeling. Where is it in or around your body? Turn your focus there. Now that you're focused on the feeling, imagine that as you were experiencing that, you had a few moments to yourself in a quiet, private room, and a trusted friend came in and asked you these questions. Listen and notice what the response is and how your feeling shifts if at all? What would you like for me to know? What are you concerned might happen if you don't continue feeling the way you're feeling right now? How can I help? So hopefully you were listening and noticing your responses. You can open your eyes now if they were closed. We have a couple minutes, if a moment, if someone would like to. I don't know. Are they allowed? Are people? I think people are allowed to come off mute. If one person would like to raise their hands and come off mute and share what your experience was. I'm not seeing any hands raised. Ah, there you go. There's Monica. Go for it.
So the moment of injustice?
Yes. When I asked those three questions, I'm just curious what your experience was of the feeling.
Anger,
Mhm,
hurt,
mhm.
disappointment, sadness, um, powerlessness to start us off.
And as I was asking those questions and did you notice anything shift or feel any different in the way that those emotions were being felt in your body?
What's interesting is the feelings were much stronger than I had anticipated. I thought I had left that experience behind, and you asked me where I felt it. And for me, it was in my chest, in my heart, and by asking those questions, I think there's a certain level of fear I had unlocked, which leads me to believe had I reacted differently, we might be in a different place today.
Hmm. Hmm. I get it. And how does that feel like with that thought? How does that thought feel to you? That I might be in a different place.
Well, I do believe we are where we're supposed to be.
Mhm.
And I know that the actions that took place, the conversations that were had made it better for people moving forward. And I think for myself, using that experience in this exercise to think about what I might do in the future.
Mm. Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing, Monica. I really appreciate it. And I think that's the whole purpose of this exercise is we want things to change out there. The fastest way to change out there is changes in here. But not mean changes, not shoulding and demanding changes, compassionate changes, allowing changes. See something in the chat. Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Okay, so this is the last thing I want to kind of leave you with, which is a quick story about me. So I didn't really talk about me today, but I think this is a good way to kind of wrap up these ideas. I grew up as judgy as they come. I was a minister, okay? We had a very rigid, narrow way of viewing life, success, and other people. And I naturally nurtured this judgment within myself too. I often would fall into low bouts of sadness, frustration, and rage at many things, but most of it I internalized. I really couldn't see the good in myself. And then to make matters worse, I was in AEC, which you all know, architecture, engineering, construction, in the body of a Black woman. I was so drained from my internal battles that I rarely could tell when I was being attacked by others simply for living and excelling while being Black, female, differently wired, and so on. Lisa mentioned intersectionality and those overlapping challenges. Okay. So once I learned the practice of insight and started using it, first for myself and then in my holistic leadership practice, I witnessed incredible results. One really simple, almost silly one, but visually very obvious one was that I lost 30 pounds and counting without even thinking about it or focusing on it. My thoughts and emotions were better organized than ever, leaving me more bandwidth to be present for others. And because of this, I was able to see what was mine and what wasn't mine when it came to psychological violence that I experienced. I was able to put my work out into the world in a truly authentic way, and I couldn't do that before. And so if I, former Miss Judgy and very narrow-minded minister, can use simple daily practice of these 3 questions of insight to empower myself and other women so much more while helping to lessen inequalities, then you can too. Okay, so this is a picture of me, by the way, from when I thought it was a fun throwback picture from when I was in college. I think I was 18 or 19 there. It was a really old picture. But thank you. I want to thank you today for trusting me with your attention and getting started in practicing insight. I know that you won't regret picking option number 3 and doing something different about gender inequality starting today and each day moving forward. And here's the QR code and the link, which I'm sure they'll also email you all to do a quick feedback form for an invitation to a witnessing circle where I will model this more and we'll actually go in much more depth in how we can create genuine psychological safety for ourselves and for others. So thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. We are now, I apologize if you can hear my computer. I switched to phone audio, but my computer seems to want to take off into space and it sounds horrific. So, but with that said, we're now going to take a moment to go into breakout rooms and reflect on what we've just heard from Deborah and our welcoming remarks, and kind of really do our best to vocalize and sit with and process the loads of information that we just gathered. It's been a bit of a roller coaster of a ride, right? So Deborah started us out with a, yo, this is gonna take 280 some years if we don't do something different. I don't know about you, but that slapped me in the face a bit. And then when you follow that up with the idea that educating and advocating are grand, but they get us nowhere, very slow, and that it is basically the status quo, that's a bit of an eye-opener, especially for a person who's with an organization who specializes in educating and advocating. You know, with that said, you know, this very much resonated with what we're doing within Women in Green and the fresh perspective. So I felt really good that we were on that page with you, Deborah. But I'd really like to invite you to so sorry, this is so loud. I really want to invite you now to enter the breakout rooms that Jessie will be placing us in. Each room should have an individual in there who will be facilitating, not so much leading the conversation or presenting, but there to help keep the conversation flowing and you know, participate in the reflections. So we do want to remind you about our code of conduct and the idea that, you know, lead with empathy, step up, step back. It's perfectly okay if you want to just be in the room and just breathe. If you don't, have a moment, or are you not ready and you're still processing and you just need a space, that's okay. For those of you who suffer from verbal diarrhea like me, you're welcome to share as long as you allow for space for people to share if and when they're ready. And remember that people respond and need time to speak up sometimes, so allow that space. So in this first round of 15 minutes, we would like you to focus on any reflections you had, share anything that arose from the exercise that Deborah had us do, where we were thinking about how we were feeling and how we would respond to those questions. And then if you have any other questions that might be bubbling up for Deborah, we'll have a moment with her afterwards to ask those questions. So with that, Jesse, did I stall enough for the breakout room setup? Not quite. Oh, we can't hear you.
Okay. You think after years of doing this, I would get better, but it's always a bit of a tech challenge for me. So yes, I have us in breakout rooms. I am going to go ahead and open those rooms right now. You're all sort of put in a room. It's exactly 4 people per room right now. So we're good with that. And let's see, the rooms are set up the 15, well, I'm at 14 minutes, because then it will give you a countdown of 60 minutes for the last minute. I did put those questions in the chat, but also your
from my own personal story, 20 years ago when I started out, I was in a male-dominated industry. A lot of times I internalized stuff because I didn't really ever have strong female role models. They a lot of times they were like, oh, well, make sure you dress a certain way and that'll get you where you need to go, rather than like relying on your skills and your own personal assertiveness and being able to kind of stand up for yourself. So I will say within our group, I think we had a really powerful conversation, because it wasn't until, like, for my own journey, I landed at a company that actually had women in power. It had women in roles that were in decision-making roles. And I was already in my early 30s by that point. So well past my formative years, I would say, was when the first time I understood like what that really looked like. Like, what did it look like? What did it feel like? How do I find my voice? And so, yeah, so if you are younger, on the younger side, and you're in an environment that allows for that, great, that's amazing. I would say, I think in the Midwest, it's a pretty mixed bag, I think, for a lot of what our experiences are, and especially what industry you find yourself in. So, but yeah, it's been an interesting journey, and I'll close with that.
Thank you so much for sharing, Erin.
I'd like to lift a couple of items from my group, if that's okay. So when we were reviewing the questions, there were a couple of things that popped up. And one, the scenarios were unexpected, and we were surprised where our mind went. And we realized that there were certain things that we've been carrying and we hadn't realized we were holding on to. I think a general consensus with the group, and I just want to share that Liz, Susan, and Rachel were in my group. With that, we were looking forward to more scenarios. I think that, Rachel kindly highlighted that, she uses a lot of this and with self-reflection and thinking through some issues and understanding how it's leading with kindness. And I think we all agree, even Susan highlighted that if we can make this a habit, this would be a huge accomplishment. And the ask is managing emotions. So when we become heated, Deborah, do you have any additional strategies that you might have in this toolbox regarding emotional management? And I forget who just spoke earlier, recognizing that it's not always going to be easy based on where you're at in terms of culture and behaviors of organization.
That's an excellent question. Can you hear me okay? Can you all hear me? I just want to make sure, because okay,
yes,
good.
Deborah, we can hear you. Thank you.
My computer was really wonky. So thank you. I know that I went really deep on the internal reflective piece of it, only just because of respect for time, but really because that's the core. So when you have the strong emotions, the questions are directed to the strong emotion. So when you're like, ah, like I heard the phrase swimming through a sea of anger that came up. It's like, oh, what is it that you want me to know? Like you can actually have the conversation with the anger. That is the point of this. Because that anger is there for a good reason. It's not just make believe and then we're just supposed to put it away in a nice little box. That's what we've been doing, which is called exiling. And in our society, every aspect of our society is exiling what does not belong. And that's why we have all of these inequalities. So I was trying to give you as core and as like simple a practice, because that's where we use the emotion. That like when we're in that emotion, the only thing is to remember. That's the thing. It's like, so sometimes it's like, I've told clients different things. Maybe have like a playlist on your phone or like a reminder or something to kind of signal, oh yeah, I can do this thing. I can go to the bathroom for 5 minutes. The bathroom was my best friend when I was in construction. I was always going to the bathroom and like crying and getting it out, right? But now this is like really focused, because in society we tend to do question number 1 really pretty decently when we're just kind, compassionate, but we don't do 2. And 2 is where we get really deep, where the core issue of the pain lies. Yeah, the bathroom is a safe space, right? And when we can get to the core issue, it's amazing how it releases something inside of us. And so it takes a little bit of faith and it just takes practice, but it's like, you can do this with any emotion. And I do it with all strong emotions, even when they're pleasant and enjoyable. So, okay, we'll go over step 2. So step 1 is, what would you like for me to know? What's on your mind? What's on your heart? Go ahead, say it. We're usually pretty decent at that if we're empaths or whatever. It's step 2, which is, what are you concerned might happen if you don't do this thing? If you don't rage, or if you don't silence your rage, what are you concerned might happen? I might get fired. I might get hit on by the boss. There's a million things that we may have. And then the third question brings it back to kind of like, did I get everything? Is there anything I can do to support you right now? And the whole goal of this 3-part exercise, whether you do it with an emotion of your own or you do it with someone else's, is that you are trying to build trust again. That you can be the leader, yourself can be the leader of all of these emotions, all these different aspects of you.
Really powerful stuff. Deborah. It's really, really great. So I just put in the chat, we were going to go into another breakout, but I think this space is really great for all of us to just share. And so if you have any final reflections and questions for Deborah, we'll just stay in this space another 10 minutes or so before we move to kind of wrapping up and closing the space. So I just wanted to share that, and please continue to share your reflections, thoughts, and questions for Deborah.
Jesse and Deborah, if I can share from our group, I thought one of the things that, and Leah, hopefully you'll join me in sharing as well. But one of the people in our group who just had to leave to go to another meeting made the point that she tries to schedule having these moments as practice. And so, Deborah, I think your point is it takes practice, right? We need to get, you can't just pull this out at the time when, you really, it becomes critical need. And so she made the point that maybe practicing both professionally and personally and kind of in all those moments. And that was really a welcome reminder for me, because I feel like that's like, I would pull them up and be like, wait, there are 3 questions. Wait, what's 2, right? And kind of stumble through. And it's that practice like breathing, right? Things that we think just come naturally, that really take more energy and effort, but then become much easier as we practice going. So thank you for starting the practice.
I want to be
Oh,
crystal.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was going to say another comment from our group, so please share.
I was going to say that I want to be really clear. This is not more bypassing or suppressing or taking stuff and being tough about it and going and processing in private. That is not what this is. A lot of stuff that we deal with, especially for women in construction and certain super male dominated fields, most fields are male dominated, but not all. But we're in our stuff, and then we can't tell what's our stuff and what's being thrown at us from someone else. This is the answer to that. Like, oh, I just saw somebody else's part go up there. That wasn't mine, right? And it's really empowering to know what's yours and be like, yeah, you can hold on to that. I know I had a raging part back there, but this other stuff, that's not mine. It's really important for us to be able to get that clarity, because we get gaslit and projected on and all the things too much. And for us to be able to understand, so we can say with clarity and with concision and with confidence, again, that's self-led. Yeah, no, it's not mine. You're gonna have to take care of that, sweetheart. But this is where I stand on this topic. We can't get there until we have our own house in order enough to be able to see clearly what's ours and what's not. That's why this is, to me, like my gift of empowerment is like, let us understand what is ours, because we just get way too much stuff that we shouldn't be taking, but because we're like, oh, maybe this, oh no, we hold on. And I use a fake voice. I'm not making fun or mocking. It's more that those parts are really genuinely not trying to cause violence to others, while at the same time sustaining way too much violence themselves. So to break those patterns, this is how we do it. Sorry, go ahead. Who else? I didn't see who else wanted to say something.
That was me, Leah here. Another thing that we talked about in our breakout session was when utilizing the questions that you shared with us. A lot of times they're used to have difficult conversations. And with the difficult conversations tends to come a high level of emotion. And just, from my personal experience, whether that be like in my personal life or, work settings, whatnot, when you're having difficult conversations, it's easy to be reactive. And so if you're asking people questions, I think sometimes you can get very reactive responses. And of course, by asking these questions or coming from a place of, positivity and care, and it's not meant to be a negative thing. However, things can get interpreted differently, specifically in high emotional settings. And so I'm wondering, in your experience, have you had situations where maybe people react negatively to be asked, when questions are asked to them, like, what's wrong with you? How are you doing? Sometimes people are like, why are you asking me these questions? Right? Like, what's wrong? Why are you asking me things? Almost like they're being attacked in some way. So I just didn't know if you have anything you can share with us, or if that's something that's happened when you use these questions, and if you have any advice on that.
Yes, thank you. That's an excellent question, Leah. So there's 3 things I'll say. I was very careful in creating the scenario of you being in a private room with a trusted friend, not with someone who barely knows you and is like, so what do you want to tell me? Like, that's not the energy, right? It's someone that you trust and is a safe person for you to be open and free with. That's the first thing. The second thing I'll say is that if you, as the person who's wanting to be in that role of providing support to the person with strong emotions, it's okay if they don't want to talk. Like, we always honor the system, honor each part wherever they are. And so we can, if you feel like if they're like reactive to the first thing that you say, be like, okay, you don't have to share anything if you don't want to. I'm just here, I'm in the next hall over if you want to come by later, like, because they may not be ready in that moment, but that doesn't mean that they're never going to be able to share with you. So that's the second thing. And then the third thing I would say is that if you are the person with the strong emotions as well as the other person, that you need a third person who's not in the middle of it. I mean, I'm still trying to do that with my daughter and it doesn't work because I want to be a spokesperson for my parts and she wants to be for hers. It's really hard to really transcend that. So, and I'm not saying it can't be done, but I wouldn't recommend it for when you're getting started with a practice like this. It's much, much better to have somebody who's who doesn't have there's a neutral third party to be able to facilitate that. And so, yeah, those are the three things that I would say. I would definitely recommend that you, if you're coming to that person, you understand that it's possible that they're not going to want to talk, and that's okay. And if you make it okay for them, that will also provide them support, even if it's not what you were thinking you were going to provide support with.
Thanks so much.
Oh, can I just interject me really quick? Because I've been in this situation with female friends of mine that I've had for 30 years, and we use humor. I literally, I might have a girlfriend who's crying, and I ask her questions, and she says something, and I was like, okay, so what would be the worst case? Like, you leave this job that you hate, that you've been treated horribly at, you know what I'm saying? And I just like turning it in a way and making it humorous. That's something that I found works really well. But again, I think to Deborah's point, each situation is different. Each person is different. So it's like knowing who you're talking to, and knowing how you all interact, right? I found humor to be highly successful in helping to diffuse and just get stuff out.
I was actually going to build on that too, Lisa, because what I was hearing from Deborah's presentation was a lot of it also is that we can get in our own heads and really think that there's a huge consequence ahead of us when it's probably not as bad as we think it is. And I'm guilty of that myself over the years. And I'm almost thinking it's more of an exercise for us to stop and be like, what's my perceived versus reality in some cases? Because yeah, like you said, if you leave a job you don't like, you're probably better off for it actually. but it can be scary because change is scary. So
But for that part that's feeling that, it's life or death. It's not a joke. And when we tell it that, oh, well, it's not a big deal, it's like we're dismissing it. We've been dismissed. You know how that feels when the guy's like, oh, yeah, well, that's just Erin's idea. Anyway, as we were saying, you're like, wait, what the heck, So honoring and really giving space for exactly where that part is really the key to being able to creating that safety. Because the reason, as I think it was the lady, who was that? She moved, Leah. What she was saying a moment ago was, if that person isn't responding well to you, it's because there's not quite enough trust there.
Right.
Because if you have a really, really trusted friend, it doesn't matter how ugly your cry is, they will, you will tell them what's going on, but the trust has not been built. And so if the trust hasn't been built, how do we build trust? We have to meet that part exactly where it is. And I say we have to, not saying it in a must way, but more so that's what makes this practice different from just being empathetic.
And Deborah, I'm not saying that I'm trying to minimize anything. Just humor has been a tool to help open the conversation, to start to unpack that. Because I think sometimes, like Erin had said, I think we get so inside ourselves that we're like it's flight, or what is it?
Flight, freeze, or fawn.
Yep, it gets to that point. And sometimes you need something to like shake you to get out of that point, so that then you can start to unpack and think through, and it put a little distance between the highly emotional part of it. Yes. And then more of the, okay, like I am okay. The world is not going to end today. I mean, because yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
All those center of the universe moments where you feel like you're the center of the universe and nothing else is like, everything revolves around you, right? Like that part, like you're saying, Deborah, right? That's how it feels in those moments. And I was just gonna add, I've been in this situation at work with males that like like we have to remember our boundaries and that it's okay to advocate for them in those moments, like where
Yeah.
I've literally had to just be like, I cannot talk about this right now. I'm gonna excuse myself and I will come back when I can talk about it, right? And that's okay too. Like we have to give ourselves that permission to like honor those parts and not take that we're weak and whatever other judgments want to throw around about women's emotionality, right? So
Actually, I was going to say that. I cut that out of the talk. Advocating and educating is really important to do. It's where we are, from where we are doing it, that makes the difference in when it's effective and when it's not. And most advocacy and education that I do now, people come to me and ask me versus me pushing onto them what I think they need to know, right? And so if you think about the idea of being self-led versus being parts-led, same topic, same conversation, but it feels very different to the participants. And that's the skill to build. And I think I'm hearing this part of me that's like, well, we need to, no, I'll just say this. Getting to know our parts is one, like the greatest gift that I could, encourage us to give ourselves, because they're so beautiful. They're basically a whole bunch of kids that have been working really hard for us our entire lives, and they never got a thank you or a birthday gift or a Christmas present or anything. And they've been working their butts off for us. And so when we come from that place, it's easier to build trust with them. And there's a lot of layers of societal narrative that makes us like downplay their beauty and their power and their wisdom that they have. They're here to teach us. Yeah.
yes, beautiful. All very important practice. And just as a reminder, like that's what's so special about this group. Just we can practice together. And like even the women in sustainability circles, that's exactly what they're intended for. Is like if you're having these types of challenges, bring it to the group, create that space where you get some reflection and perspective and feedback from the group to say, how to handle certain situations. And it doesn't have to be dire, but it can be once you're at, so. I see the time, we're creeping up at 1. And so Deborah, I just want to offer you kind of a final space to kind of close out. I know you have a survey. I'm going to drop that link in the chat for folks, and then I'll share the PowerPoint. We're just going to end in the last 5 minutes, just sharing some events and other ways you can plug in. But first, Deborah, why don't you go ahead and wrap the bundle?
Well, thank you so much for your attention today, honoring me and with your attention, because that's really the greatest gift that we can gift each other is our attention, right? Attention is love in so many ways when we give each other energy. So thank you. I feel so passionately about these things. There's so much there's so much richness. So I really do hope that you fill out the survey, give me some feedback. What I heard so far, I wrote a couple notes, was very helpful. Thank you. And I really do hope that you'll be able to do that so that you can join. So I have your info so I can send you an invitation to the witnessing circle that'll be in 10 days. I will conduct it, and then we'll go a lot deeper into what we started to discuss today, but it's a good way again to have some practice and to witness without having to do anything, some embodied work. And this is really how I model psychological safety in your body in real time in a room together. So I really do hope you'll be able to fill out the survey and to join me. And thank you again, everyone. And thank you for the planning committee too. You ladies are amazing. Thank you.
Likewise. Thank you, Deborah. I will be sending an email out on Monday is my intention with the recording and all the follow-up information. So I'll have that link in there as well if you want to grab it from the QR code. If someone on the planning team, I can't grab it while I'm in presenter mode. So I said that and then I couldn't do that. So that would be awesome. And just, yeah, this space today was really special and heartfelt, and I appreciate that. So the love is shared. It feels a little awkward to switch to talking about like events now, kind of ending this lovely space, but that's what we're going to do in the next 5 minutes here. Just ways you can continue to involve. I mentioned stay involved. Mentioned the circles again, just to remember, please sign up by the end of the month. And we'll place you in circles. As Corinne mentioned, I run the Wisconsin Sustainable Business Council, and we're a member organization, so we invite you to be a part of our community as well. You know, we host ongoing educational events, have access to our Green Masters program, and in April, we're playing Cool Choices, which is a really fun game, so it's a great time to sort of get involved and engaged. And we have a bunch of upcoming events. As always, I'll just share that link out. Again, I mentioned the Women in Sustainability Wellness event in June, and that's the one that I would love to see you all in person at. So that's all from the WSBC side. I know both Lisa and Corinne have some final thoughts as well.
All right, so from Be Local Wisconsin's perspective, there's a program called the Level Program, and it is a program for businesses led or owned by Black, Indigenous, or people of color who also identify as women. So the Level Program is open for enrollment right now. Submissions are due by March 25th. And what this program does is it helps business owners who want to become a certified B Corp through the Level Program. You work with trained consultants to help you through that process. So it's a great program. August Ball, who was one of our speakers a couple years ago, her company was the first in Wisconsin to be in the Level Program. So I highly recommend it. Please share this out with others. The next one is that Evolution Marketing will be doing 2 upcoming educational webinars. The first one's on impacting stakeholder sustainability through the lens of customers, workforce, and community. So basically, a lot of the topics we covered today from the social sustainability standpoint will be covered at this free educational webinar. Next one, Jesse. Oh, the next slide. And then after that, the following month, we're going to be doing one about the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And we're going to talk about a free tool that exists. It's called the SDG Action Manager tool, and how you can use that tool to help your business align what it is doing with the Sustainable Development Goals. So again, talking about making these system-wide changes from a business standpoint, that's the purpose of these 2 webinars, is to help educate you in how to do that with the tools that exist out there. That's it for me. So they're open and free. Please join us.
Excellent. Thank you, Lisa. I apologize. This computer has been making this noise for the last hour, and my train of thought is just non-existent. But I do agree with Jesse and Lisa. It's really weird to just be promoting our ongoing engagements and opportunities. But I would really be doing you a disservice if I didn't share with you the amazing resources and things that USGBC has coming up. So in the chat, I took the liberty of dropping some relevant links and articles and things that I hope will help you stay connected to the work that we're doing. Jesse, if you could go to the next slide, please. The 2 things that I think are most important and that I would strongly encourage participation in our upcoming, we've revived the Regional Impact Conference. This is a very popular Midwest conference that we did for several years leading up to the pandemic. We tried to take it virtual and then shifted gears as an organization and tried to roll it out in a different way. And ultimately, our community was loud and clear that they wanted the old format back, and we're doing that in force. This is now an entirely Midwestern conference. It used to just be the west side of the Midwest. We're including the whole Midwest. We have some stellar sessions and things that are available that are open to all, and a really broad topics. But most importantly, the Women in Green program, one of our outreach events is at this event in St. Paul in May. So I highly encourage you to join us. Next slide, please. And then we're going to go through these a little bit fast. We have some on-demand First Friday webinar series that they're live broadcast of our continuing education things for members. These are free and easy ways to get CEs or get up to speed on a variety of topics. Next, please. And then we have some really lovely summits that are happening. There's the Workforce Development Summit in September. Next, please. And then, transforming the market as a whole. The built environment, while it's really easy to pretend that the only ones impacted are the AEC community, this is an all-in effort. Right, we're in buildings. If we like it or not, we're all impacted by the way that the built environment in our communities are built. It's really important that the AEC community starts hearing loud and clear and seeing interest from those that they are serving. Right now, they're in a vacuum. So my plea to all of you is to please start coming. Showing some interest, get informed on how you can advocate for yourself within these built environments, and to help grow the demand and the understanding from the AEC community that they should be making adjustments. Next, please. And then, of course, we have our annual conference, which is always a hoot, that draws in individuals from across the globe. This year, it's going to be in Philadelphia in November. And we'd, obviously love to have you at that conference. And then, okay, next. And then, of course, membership makes the magic happen. So please consider being a member. And I think that's it. Please say it's it. Damn, it's not. Lead V5. Oh, it was recorded just then. Lead V5, of course, is being developed right now. This is the latest iteration. There will be opportunities for the public, any of our members and others, to offer feedback on this new evolution of LEAD. And what's really neat about this is LEAD was originally designed in a way that was very AEC focused. So it talked AEC language, it responded to typical industry methods of communication and things like that. This new LEAD V5 is taking the old and evolving it into systems that will be much more responsive to the general business marketplace and ESG reporting and ultimately performance outcomes. So it's a really exciting time. I highly encourage you to participate when that comes. And we're hoping that LEAD V5 will be live and approved by 2025. Okay, I think that's it. Yes. Thank you, everyone, for coming. It was really a pleasure to engage with all of you and learn from one another. And Jesse and Lisa, as always, it's a pleasure to work on these programs with you.
And if